believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Laura Thorson, and I'm so glad to be with you again on a Wednesday evening. We have a special guest for you tonight that I think you're really going to enjoy. I know I will, and I'll be telling you about him in just a minute. Thank you all for attending. If you're new or watching this as a replay, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Please drop in the comments where you're watching from. We always want to hear from you. Tonight, I'll be talking with Jeff Anderson of Warrior Life about the topic of self-reliance, what that means, and why it's important. And, in our defenders community, we talk about being prepared from a self-defense standpoint all the time. In fact, the quote from Adam Winch, the founder of Defenders USA, talks about this very mission on the Defenders USA website, where he says, "We help prepare and train those willing to stand in the gap to defend themselves, their loved ones, and their fellow man." Well, tonight we're going to take that idea a little bit further than self-defense and expand on it, because self-defense is just a slice of a much bigger pie in the lifestyle of preparedness. So we're going to explore that tonight with Jeff Anderson of Warrior Life. First, a couple of things about self-reliance I want to touch on. From a community standpoint, we're generally better together. Am I right? If we can rely on our family, our friends, and our community, and in most circumstances, we definitely should do that. And we can become self-reliant as a group rather than just on an individual basis too. However, it's also important to know how to rely on yourself in case you don't have anyone else around, or in the case that the systems that we rely on in our society are disrupted temporarily as well. So that's why we're touching on this topic of self-reliance. And one last thing I want to say about it. While I believe it's absolutely important to prepare, to train, and learn everything that we can to mitigate any kind of an adverse event, it's equally important, in my opinion, to not be fearful or hypervigilant. I remind myself that the Bible says to be awake, to be alert, but not be alarmed, and to not be fearful. So ultimately, I think it's good to remember that we are not in control of everything. So let's keep that in mind as we go on tonight. With that said, buckle in. It's going to be a great show. I do have a few announcements here before we get to Jeff Anderson. First of all, we're going to have a live Q&A at the end of the broadcast, so be thinking of questions for Jeff as we go along. If they pop in your head, just put them in the chat. We'll gather those at the end of the broadcast. And tonight I might be asking you a few questions along the way as well, and getting your opinion about certain things that we're talking about. So be ready for that. And of course, feel free to comment throughout the broadcast. As I said before, we love hearing from you. Adam Winch, the founder of Defenders USA, is behind the scenes, thank God, helping me tonight. And he's been on the road for almost a month, traveling across the U.S., helping people, teaching them all about self-defense, particularly shooting. And he's here with me physically tonight. I think he's here with me mentally, but he has had quite a run, and he is recovering from that and is back with his family again. So we're really happy to see him at home again. He's been traveling from Arizona to Montana, over through Nebraska, down to Missouri, over to Kansas, and back to Arizona again. So Adam was on Jeff's podcast too, by the way, Jeff Anderson's podcast called Warrior Life. And that was earlier this year. So if you want to go back and watch that, I would encourage you. That was a really good interview. You can find that on the Warrior Life YouTube channel or on the Defenders USA YouTube channel under the interviews and other appearances tab. So the last thing I want to tell you before we get to Jeff. I was going to give you a tidbit of the week this week, and the tidbit of the week was going to be called Walking Through the Fire. And I've decided that instead of sharing it right now and taking up more time, because we have limited time with Jeff tonight, and I really want you guys to hear what he has to say, I'm instead going to post that tidbit of the week on the Defenders Live community on locals.com later this week. So, but regarding that, I don't, no one's probably noticed but me, or maybe close friends, but I've been pretty quiet over the last few weeks, especially on social media and things like that. And that's generally out of character for me. But the biggest reason that I've been quiet is because I've been walking through my own fire recently. And do you remember when I first started doing these lives? I promised you that I would always be real with you and share anything that I learned on my journey with you if I thought it could help you. Well, I did not exactly have a tidbit called walking through the fire in mind when I said that. I had more of a warm, fuzzy kind of subject in mind. And I guess, I may have thought that personal growth was more of a warm, fuzzy subject back then, but I didn't realize that it is actually really raw and cuts really deep. And I think that at times it should be that way. So I've learned a lot. And while I'm definitely not out of the fire yet, and I hope I'm never really out of the fire because fire forges you, right? And that's how you grow. I have gained enough distance now that I can at least share some important insights with you if you're walking through your own fire right now. So there are some hard truths and some words of encouragement I want to share with you on that, and things I wish I'd known, and some lessons that were honestly learned the hard way that I want to share with you. So again, instead of taking up more time, I want to post that on the Defenders Live community on locals.com. Go to locals.com to the Discover tab, search up Defenders Live, and that's where I'll be posting that. So also, last thing, if you haven't joined the Defenders Live Facebook group, please do that and go to defenders-live.com for all things Defenders Live. Okay, I think I've said my piece on all that now. So let's get into why you tuned into the show in the first place. We're going to talk to Jeff Anderson. Now, Jeff is a lifelong student of what he calls survival arts. And it was Jeff's military training that led him to seek out strategies that would protect not only himself on the battlefield, but also provide for his family's own self-reliance in any sort of disaster, crisis, or collapse. After 10 years of military training in elite infantry units around the world, Jeff began working as a security consultant and executive protection specialist for private clients and the entertainment industry. Specializing in military style hand to hand and weapons combat, Jeff offered classes and seminars based on practicality and battlefield effectiveness. In Jeff's survival training, it was his service overseas and in combat missions that he was able to get a first-hand glimpse of what a city gripped in collapse and without rule of law is like for its citizens. He uses his unique experience to inject a more realistic view of what to expect in survival scenarios and provide practical solutions, even in extreme environments, for true survivalists. Ultimately, his training and experience has led him to create Warrior Life, which is fueled by more than 100 of the world's top instructors in law enforcement, military, and civilian survival schools. So let's welcome Jeff onto the show. Hey, Jeff. Let me unmute you.
Camera isn't working with you, so.
Oh, there you are. I can hear you now.
You got me
I
now?
can see
Okay.
you too, so this is good. How are you doing?
Yeah, my fancy camera isn't working with StreamYard, so you're gonna have to
Your
deal with
fancy
my
camera? Oh no.
my fancy camera.
That's the worst.
Makes me look a lot better than this. So,
Jeff, I know exactly
yeah.
what you're saying because I use my fancy camera for my shows too. Yeah. No, I get it. Well, you know what? I bet the
It's not
audience
working.
won't care. I think what's most important is what you have to offer, and I have a feeling you'll have a lot. So thank you for coming on the show. I know it
Yeah,
was
let's have
kind of
some
a
fun.
last minute thing getting you on here, but I was hopeful that we could hear you and see you. So thank God for that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just start at the beginning here. You started your company, Warrior Life, and you say that Warrior Life focuses on using a structured framework to continuously improve self development, to be self made, self reliant, and self protected. So we'll get into a little bit of a timeline on that here in just a minute. But my first question to you, I know it's a simple question, and I want to hear from the audience on this too, but what to you is a warrior? And what does that
Yeah.
lifestyle entail? I think it's
Yeah, it's
important.
It is. I mean, it's fun. I mean, gosh, how many different definitions of warrior are out there? Like we needed another one, right?
We always need
It
another
really had
one.
to. Yeah, that's right. But it's not like I have the definition cornered on warrior, but I had to go through an evolution of our current business because we've gone through we had a magazine for a while and we were modern combat and survival, and my interests started off in like just in martial arts when I was younger, and then combatives, and I was never really into firearms, and then got in the military, got more into firearms. And when we first started our business, it was really focused mostly on martial arts, and then it was more into firearms. But then what people wanted was survival, and it's like I really wasn't. I was more into like wilderness survival when I was younger, but the more I started looking online to try and please our followers, everything I was finding like, but that doesn't even make any sense. Like that's not how things
Mhm.
really work. And so the more I looked into survival practices, it was really just based on theory. It didn't seem like a lot that I was finding out there was really based on what I had seen with my own eyes, both in natural disaster and dealing with natural disasters here domestically, but then also my combat experience was in urban environments, and it was basically a collapsed city. And the things that I saw there, I didn't realize the application it would have later on in my life. It was the experience I was going
Mhm.
through. But as I started
Mhm.
seeing all the different survival information out there, I'm like, that doesn't work, and that's not going to work, and they're not even taking into account this over here. And so I just started putting out the information that I'd collected from my experiences, and it made people think. So I've kind of made it a point to really kind of challenge everything. But my my point with how we got to like what's a warrior is really more about business wise. This probably wasn't the best choice for me. Like we started off in self defense, and then we did firearms, and then we had survival. And with those different members of our audience, like the self defense people, a lot of them don't even really care about firearms, and like survival is like they watch The Walking Dead, but that's it. The firearms people are, like some of them don't think that they don't need self defense at all. They don't need any hand
Yeah.
trans. I've got my gun, right?
Yeah.
They're a little bit more inclined toward survival practices because of a conservative mindset, and there's just a little bit more crossover there. The
Mhm.
survivalists out there, the preppers that are out there, they're always into guns, and they're typically into hand-to-hand combat also. And so,
Mhm.
but it was hard to really kind of like please everybody all at the same time. And then we had to go through a rebranding about 2 or 3 years ago for some off reasons. And when that happened, it was like, business wise, I should really just focus in with what I know where we stand out.
Mhm.
And when I started looking at it, it's like, but all of these things are important. And when I really started
Yeah.
thinking about it and how I live my life and just how everything that we put out there, whether it was survival, whether it was firearms, whether it was combatives, everything we were putting out was, well, these are all the things that you kind of need to be able to do in
Mhm.
order to be like a warrior, right? Like, because you're your family's warrior. And everything that I saw about warrior online was all about, you had to be a Navy SEAL with a bunker in the mountains of Montana and a four-wheel drive monster truck to get you up there. And
You
it's
had
like,
to say Montana, didn't you, Jeff?
I
You know that's
had
where
to,
I
yeah.
am, right?
You're in a bunker right now. I know.
I am in a bunker. Yeah.
We
How'd
can
you know?
see your monster truck right through the
Mhm.
window out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was like, but then the other side of it though was people that, that love the concept of being a warrior. They call themselves a warrior because they have the bumper sticker and they've got the t-shirt,
Mm.
but they're not paying attention to the things that, like in the military, as warriors, it was our daily existence, right? We were always doing something.
Mhm.
And I think it's really easy to just check the box, buy the t-shirt, slap the bumper sticker on the four-wheel drive, and
Mhm.
say, I'm a warrior, because you claim the title. But that's
Mhm.
not going to do your family any good when your health is bad or you're overweight, or and the house is burning and you're not even in good enough physical condition to be able to drag your spouse out of a burning bedroom, right? So
Mhm.
I've seen all these experiences where people, you're that's the moment. It's like, here's your calling, the threat's right there,
Mhm.
and not prepared for it.
Yeah.
And it ends up when people are like, people want to be prepared for it, but it's really easy when especially when you don't really, I guess, like deep down on a cellular level, believe that this stuff can ever happen to you. It's
Mhm.
really easy to just own the gun, go to the range, blast some stuff off. It's just,
Mhm.
I'm a warrior. And
Yep.
then all of a sudden, when something happens, you freeze because you
Mhm.
haven't experienced that before, or you're not really prepared. Like that's your test. And what we tell
Mhm.
people is that you are, like, anybody can be a warrior. I don't care if it is an 80-year-old grandmother at home. Like, you are where you are right now. But if you really want to call yourself a warrior and live that lifestyle, it's not as hard as you think, but it does require you to get off your ass, like do something. And so we have, our system is really designed to take people from zero or wherever they're at now. Cause we're not saying
Mhm.
there's like, well, you have to reach this level and then you can,
Mhm.
like, no, you can call yourself a warrior right now, because here are the hallmarks of a warrior. You're self-made, self-reliant, and self-protected. You have to realize first, mindset wise, you're it. Like, it's
Mhm.
your eyes your family is going to be looking into in the dark parking lot, or stuck in the elevator, or the building's burning, or there's an active shooter. Like, it's your time, it's go time, and you're either warrior ready or you're not. And
Mhm.
to get there, it doesn't have to be you go away to some hoorah weekend, fun class and have fun and feel like you got a bunch out of it. In fact, we use advanced learning principles and brain-based technology, and so we call it neurotactical programming. So it's how do you systematically become warrior ready for the moment where you're going to be called upon to be that protector, or to be the person that is going to, um, be self-reliant, and your family is going to be able to live through a grid down blackout, whatever the situation is, right? Like, you got to be ready for it. In the military, we oftentimes we never know what the next mission is going to be. It could be a defensive mission, it
Mhm.
could be an offensive mission. You could be walking to your objective and you walk into an ambush. Like, we have to prepare for all of these different things. Basic trainings are, and really what I've found is that the military training that I went through had so much more application than I ever realized when we got into the survival space, and how we trained in the military, how training was structured in the military.
Mhm.
And and we use a lot of those same principles to be able to help people continuously level up, right? And so I think the best analogy for how I just kind of framed the beginning of it, and how we open up being a warrior to everybody that's willing to do the things that a warrior does, is basic training. Because, I mean, in basic training, the drill sergeants get this motley crew of knuckleheads that get off the bus, who have come from all walks of life, right? We have some that are
Mhm.
overweight, some that, look like they're 20 pounds soaking wet. You've got guys who are hoodlums. Basically, when I went in, it was like, it wasn't for me, but I'm just saying, like, in court, it was like, go to jail or join the army. Now you can't even get people in the military anymore. But it's like you have all these people that come together, and for the same reason, like, your military property now, and our goal is to make you warrior ready for when that
Mhm.
call comes. We're sticking you on a C-130. We're getting you, like, you're in combat
Mhm.
right out of the bat. So they have a very short window of time to turn you from mommy's little boy who is always getting in trouble, and turn you into a warrior that's ready to go out there and face the enemy. And
Well, let's
um and
let's
even
dive into
then,
some of those examples.
sure.
Could I ask you about what are some examples that you say run counter to your own personal experience about survival principles? I'm curious about that.
That run counter to, say that again.
So you said there are some survival principles that run counter to your own personal experiences, that cause you to
Oh, you
to
mean like that I
create
see
warrior
out
life.
there?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that aren't exactly accurate or helpful.
Yeah, sure. um a lot of it comes down to people don't understand how fragile our infrastructure really is. I think, one of the things I get across to people is that, we go to the grocery store and there's groceries there. We go to the gas station, there's gas there. All of that is on a resupply line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's in a business where you have goods, it's the same thing. There's supply and demand, right? And so when there can be supply there, but then all of a sudden something can happen, a triggering event of some kind can happen, which suddenly now the demand is spiked up, right? We saw it with toilet paper during COVID, right? So all of a sudden everybody flocks. Now there's no more resources. And the same thing happened where I was in combat, like combat shut down an entire city. And so resupply wasn't happening. What we saw was that in just a matter of 3 days, because most cities operate on like a 3-day resupply chain. So every 3 days, fuel's coming in. Every 3 days, groceries coming in. So it's not the same day for everybody, but it's about 3 days for goods that get turned over and they get turned over because there are basic resources for living, right? So when infrastructure goes down, you might not have sanitation. That was a big thing that I saw in combat that I think people don't realize, that when sanitation goes down, and I use that as an example because it's something that, we use the bathroom every day, but nobody ever thinks about when it's like just no longer going to be available. And I know what people do. They just continue to go. As disgusting as it is, they don't stop because people just don't. It's interesting. Like you wouldn't necessarily think about that, but that's exactly what happens. So I've been in toxic environments, and it just to see mostly what happens to people. I'm talking about like your friends, your family, your neighbors, people that you wouldn't expect to be a threat at all. People start getting very cranky when they're hungry, and when their families are starving. When there's no food, and you're asking other people, and they're like, "No, sorry, like I've got to provide for my own family too." And that works for a little while, but then once you're desperate enough, people will do desperate things. And so I think for people to really, there's all sorts of directions that can go in, but I was seeing a lot of things being put out there about, most everybody will just put up the looters will be shot sign, things like that. Like they see what they see, and then they think that that's what you do. And so people get together, they're drinking beer, they've got all their guns out in front of their house, they got a looters will be shot sign, all these things that even militarily, like I'm going to start off just getting myself in trouble right now.
Go right ahead.
Like the warrior class out there, right? The tactical warrior class out there and I'm going to piss off a bunch of people that are listening right now, but like they love camouflage. They love camouflage. And so the camouflage bug out bags, the camouflage this, I got my AR-15, and it's like the concept of camouflage is to blend in. And so enough people have seen enough episodes of Doomsday Preppers and Walking Dead, everything else, to know that somebody that looks like one of those people from television, you pretty much can guarantee that they've got extra food somewhere, or they probably have ammunition. And so it's, if you've got a show of force, it's one thing. If you've got like a whole battalion of Navy SEALs, it's not a battalion of Navy SEALs, but I'm going to catch hell for that one too. I'm going to get all the nasty mail for that one. But it's like, you know what I mean? Like if you're truly that organized, which is an elite level of organization, trust me, then fine. Like slap on all the cool gear, break out the t-shirts, put on your Punisher, helmet, whatever. But that's not going to do you any good when it's you and a small team, or even most people, it's just them. Like they know they should have a team of people that, mutual aid group or something, or a survival team, but
and they're broadcasting.
Most people aren't really doing it. Yeah. And that's it. So you're standing out as somebody who's prepared, and it gives you, you want to thump your chest out there, but really what you're doing is you're making yourself a target. And so it's not really camouflage, so we tell people, you want to be tactical, but you don't want to look tactical, and that's being tactical. So that's probably the biggest contrast that I see out there, is that it's everybody wants to be a doomsday prepper, badass. And It's
Oh,
like
I know.
you
I
do
know
not
a
want
good
to.
quote. It's like we have this joke in the horse industry that everybody wants to be a cowboy until it's time to do cowboy stuff.
Yeah. And for
Right? It's
me,
the
like, just
same
getting on a
concept.
horse, I know I always want to do like a cattle drive, but
Yeah.
like 10 minutes on a horse, my ass is killing me so bad. Like, how does anybody sit on this stupid thing for so long? And it's like,
See?
it starts trotting and it's like,
Uh-huh.
they're like, put your feet forward. I'm like, they're up near his ears. I'm getting flopped up and down like a paddle ball here.
Oh, you need
I
some
don't get the
lessons,
horse
Jeff.
thing.
You need
I
some
do need
lessons. But it's
lessons.
the same
Absolutely. Yeah.
concept. It's the same
Yeah.
concept about you know, doing the cool stuff, having all the gear, right? So let's get into that because we want to talk about some common sense baseline things that we can keep in mind for being prepared. And I want you guys in the audience to participate too. What are some common sense preparedness things that you do or that you think people might consider? And let's talk
Mm.
about too, Jeff. What do you think is what is the best? Where is the best place to start? My opinion, the best place to start is between your ears. And we say that with self defense as well. So I think that if you have not prepared your mind, your body cannot follow. So that's one thing that we talk about a lot. Do you agree with that? Or is I don't think the gear comes first. And a lot of people start with the stuff. They start with the gear. I was on a show, actually, I think it's airing tonight. I was on a show on the Preparedness channel, if you guys want to watch that, where I had the analogy of people buying guns and thinking they're safe, right? They buy the gun, they think they're safe, even though they're not trained and prepared to run the gun. Okay, it's the same analogy, in my opinion, as if you knew. Okay, here's the scenario. Let's say that you'd never driven a car in your life. Never. You didn't. You might have intellectually kind of know how to do it, but you've never actually driven a car. And the scenario is that you bought the car and you parked it in your garage because you knew if stuff hit the fan, you'd have to drive that car 100 miles north. Okay, let's say. But you've never been in a car. You've never actually been in a car and learned how to run it. You have no subconscious competence whatsoever of how to drive a car. And we all, many of us who drive cars, we have a level of subconscious competence where we don't have to think about when to slow down or when to push the gas pedal or when to push the brake. And that same concept, I think that analogy applies to preparedness and to gun training as well. Buying the gear and having the stuff is not enough, and it won't save you. Your training in it might. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. All right. So one
Are you
on
taking notes,
starting
Jeff?
with the brain, like where to start, right? So yeah, I am
Where
taking
to
notes.
start? Yeah.
So where to start? So two things. One, I think will help people have a will help people relax a little bit, which is you start with where you are. You start
Mhm.
with where you are, and that's what I tell people is that, like, I get it. Like, I talk about how you've got to take care of your body, right? And if you're overweight, and people, that's gonna, that's gonna hurt a little bit. But I'm not saying you have to have a six pack abs or anything like that. But you are where you are right now, no matter where it is. So if you have diabetes right now, you have diabetes. Like, you have what you have. You can't wish for that you hadn't done something different or that you're starting from a different spot. So one, relax. You already have stuff like the basics of right now for survival. You have a shelter, you have food, you have water, you have those, you have enough right now to be able to start putting stuff together. So I just want people to understand that there is no bar to get over to get started. Our calling for people really is just, you've got to just do things step by step. And so that gets into the next step you were talking about. We're starting was the brain. So with us, we've got what we call the S3 Warrior Machine. So it's strength, skills, and strategy. And that bottom layer of strength is where we start our machine. So it's like the path to becoming what we call warrior ready. So the very bottom rung is brain, body, and backbone. So we start with the
Hmm.
brain. We start with being aware of the reality of different things. Like if you don't believe anything's ever going to happen, then you're never going to really do anything. Why would you? You don't really have to. So
Mhm.
understanding where true threats are, where taking an assessment of where you're at with different things, but the brain is where we start. In fact, the next layer that we have is skills, and that's where we start getting into the skills you need to be. It's like the 80-20 rule, right? So it's not like
Mhm.
these massive courses. We give people this like shortcut. It's less than 30 minutes. These classes all are on very specific topics relate, and they again start off from the very bottom, which is mindset. So even the process that they go through for skill development, which we break it down into firearms, self-defense, and survival practices. And so most of those are a lot of re-education. It's a lot of
Mm.
trying to empty the glass for people to understand things that they've probably come to believe over a period of time that really aren't useful to them. And it's not just beginners. Like I've talked with
No,
experts,
it's
and
not.
look, our whole thing with we're like Mike, my path is to continue to learn. Like there's people out listening right now that are way better shooters than I am, way better that like you've got something that you're doing way better than I am. And so my goal, all I care about is just taking care of my family. So whoever I can learn from, I want to learn from them. And the same thing, for me, it's like I've, I've had some things that have gone out there I've caught a lot of hell for, but nobody's been able to prove me wrong on some of these things. But they're a re-education process. And so that's where we felt like we really needed to get down to emptying the glass for people, building them back up. And that's where our following has really come from, is people really rethinking what they
Mhm.
thought was a truism and then really thinking about it. And it's like, oh, you know what? That makes total sense. That's out the door.
Mhm.
So, but brain, body, and backbone is where we start. I don't care if you're 400 pounds right now and you're overweight, whatever. It doesn't matter where you are when you're listening to this right now. It matters what you're going to do when you're done listening to this, what you're going to do tomorrow. And I don't care if it's walking around the living room and you get winded and you got to get back down on the couch. Do one lap around the living room today, try and do a lap and a half tomorrow, 2 lap, whatever it is. It's just continuously make gradual progress and you'll get there. It's
Mhm.
so it doesn't have to be. And the other thing is we make it fun. If it's not fun, nobody's going to do it. And so we find ways. We built what we call neurotactical programming, is these advanced learning principles that we build into our training so that people will have it in long-term memory. It becomes a
Mhm.
skill that you own rather than just something that you learned or a YouTube video you watched. And then the
Right.
final thing I'll say about what you were talking about was the gear thing, because you're absolutely right. Everybody loves to just buy the gear. I've got the bug out bag. I've got the this, I've got the that. And so, but even that's where I tied in with like the military. Before we started any mission, it didn't matter what it was. We always started with an operations order. Now, this has been developed over, like eons in military time of just fine tuning, like what are all of the different factors that you need to know about the mission going into it. And so that's planned at a very high level. Like this is on the map, this is what we have to take, this objective. How are we going to do it? We have intel, we have recon, so we have a good idea what the enemy's capabilities are, how many there are there, um, what's meeting us once we finally get to the objective. So everything is planned out all the way to exactly what everybody's role is in the team, and then what gear are you going to need? Like if we're taking off, if we're going to be on helicopters or if we're walking, whatever it's like, that's going to dictate what we're going
Mhm.
to need once we finally get to, just to be able to get to the objective. And then once we're there, how are we going to get out of there? How are we going to take the objective? All of those different things are all spelled out extremely detailed in these operations orders. And then they're
Mhm.
they're given to the leaders. The leaders go back, you give it to the team. So it trickles down. So before you go on that mission, everybody knows their role and everybody knows exactly what gear to take. But here's the thing, is that the gear that you're going to bring comes up in paragraph 4 of the operations order. And it's not the first thing. It's like, hey, what's the coolest stuff we can bring with us to take this objective, right? I don't know. I just saw this like free plus shipping gizmo I can get, and it's like, so. But it's the whole point there is that your gear is based upon the mission. And
Mhm.
so you've got to make sure that you're in alignment with whatever your mission is. And most people just haven't even thought about what their mission is. Because your mission drives your plan, it drives your training, it drives your gear, it drives everything. But most people have not really thought out their mission. And
Mhm.
probably one of the best example, like the most common example I get from people, because the survival market, the conservative, area, because that's really kind of where a lot of survival or self-reliant people are kind of housed, is they're an older demographic. And so they're like, why would I ever bug out? Like, I would never leave my house. Like, I've got my house here. I've got all my stuff here. Like, why would I ever do that? Well, you most likely wouldn't unless you had to. Like, if
Mhm.
there's a wildfire coming toward you, it's not like, oh, I guess we're staying in the house. Like, I mean, you're going to have to. I mean, I've been through a natural disaster. My town went through a natural disaster, and there's some horrific stories of some people that weren't prepared. Friends of mine that weren't prepared and almost died in that. And so people, I don't think people ever really think about what their mission really is and look at all of the your backup plans and everything you would need if you're I'm not going to leave the house doesn't work anymore because you have to leave
Mhm.
the house.
Right.
So but that's going to drive a lot of things, because then if you decide,
Mhm.
oh, I guess I was wrong, I guess we do have to leave the house, but you
Mhm.
don't have the right gear, you don't have the gasoline, now there's the highway's a parking lot, for like 50 miles. And so you have to take all of that stuff into account early on and rethink, I think, your mission. And
Mhm.
that's what drives everything.
So if you were to look at preparedness, like in the beginning, I said that self-defense, firearms training, blah, 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 that's a small sliver of a big pie. If you were to have a big pie, what are all the pieces of that pie from a preparedness standpoint? I assume shelter, water, food. And in what order does that go in?
Yeah, again, it's starting where you're at. So, I mean, the basics of it, when we're talking about like survival, right? Like, well, we know what we need to survive, and it's really not that. It's not a vast thing. You need shelter from the elements. I mean, arguably, you need shelter because you could be out in the open,
Mhm.
but if you're exposed to the elements, trust me, being wet and cold, um, you're gonna make poor decisions. You can die of hypothermia. There's lots of people that go hiking down a trail, get stuck there overnight, and die overnight because they didn't realize that the temperature goes down. So shelter is one thing, and that could just mean an emergency bag that can act as shelter. We need shelter, food, water, security. Those to me are, I mean, and I add security in there because that's not, we didn't learn that in school, but we learned about shelter, food, and water. But
Mhm.
security, because of what I've seen happens to everyday folks when
Mhm.
there are no resources, when it's a battle for just literally for survival. And so I take security very, very, I mean, that's woven into absolutely everything that we do. On top of that, you have to look at, well, what are you normally dependent upon right now? So if you're if you have prescription medicines that you have to take for a chronic illness, and if an infrastructure goes down, no doctors, hospitals might be overrun if they're even operating. We know things are going to get looted. I mean, we've seen all these things happen. This isn't like tinfoil hat stuff. And so you being able to get those medicines is potentially going to be impossible. So how do you plan for that? So medical
Mhm.
stuff is a big part of it. Especially, doesn't matter what it is. If it's a natural disaster, um, there's going to be toxins in the environment. There's going to be metal shards. There's going to be like refuse around, right? So a little cut can get infected. You might not be able to get first responders to come to you. You might not have a doctor available or hospitals and things like that. So medical is part of that as well. I would say
Mhm.
more like, true first aid, like trauma care
Mhm.
is going to be the most critical part of that. And but you'll see people, like you said, like buy all the gear. They got the nasal pharyngeal stuff to shove down everybody's nose. They don't know how to use it or anything, but hey, I've got that
They
stuff. I'm
might
ready
run
to
into
go.
somebody that knows how to use it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or they watch a YouTube video, so yeah, they'll be able
Yeah.
to get it. But it,
Yeah.
it's you're right. It's a lot of stuff, but again, it's driven by what is it that you're like you deal with in your own area.
Mhm.
Um, I just moved to Florida about 3 years ago. Where I was before that, I was in a very rural area, small town, well positioned, fortified. Like my house was, I had everything all set up, and then I moved to Florida, like the worst state I could possibly move to. If I ever needed to bug out, I got one way up. I can't even go in like all directions here. Worst place. But I met my high school. I reconnected with my high school sweetheart, and
Aw.
all right, fine, I'll go to Florida.
I love
So,
that story.
so it's it's just you have to really take a look at what your practical threats are, not tinfoil hat threats. What are the practical threats, and then what resources do you have? Well, that you already have. Like start where you're at.
Mhm.
Take stock of what food you have. I had a friend that was in he was in New York City when I forget the name of the hurricane that came through. This was about I want to say 8 years ago or so. It was like Irma. Somebody out there will probably say something, but like Irma or something came through. I'm sure I screwed that up, but he was in New York. This was when New York City really got hit, right? And then like it shut down infrastructure, and then the trash was piling up out there. People were going through dumpsters trying to find food.
Mhm.
He was just visiting New York City and couldn't get a flight out, and so he went to the grocery store, and it was bare. And so he figured he found a great solution, which I learned from him. It's like he found out that the ethnic stores, like he went to an Asian store, packed with food, packed
Mm.
with food. Nobody ever thought about that. They're all going to, HEB, the Piggly Wiggly, the Publix, whatever.
Mhm.
They're going where you go. And
Yeah.
so he got all this food, brought it back to his hotel room. His buddies all came over. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna wait out the hurricane and everything." And they're all there, and then they start eating all of his. They're not eating like the stuff that's going to spoil in the next couple of days. They're eating all the stuff that would last a few weeks. And
Oh,
so he's like, "What are you guys doing?" But people aren't thinking about those things, right?
yeah.
So I think so. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff to cover, but it really has to be personalized to you. It's not a one
Yeah.
size fits all thing,
Mhm.
and you really can take stock in what you have right now. Just going through
Mhm.
your pantry, your freezer, knowing if all the electric went down, because grid down blackout right now is, I think, the biggest thing that everybody's like super worried about, rightfully
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
And that would be devastating, like literally just change the life as we know it, like for who knows how long. So um, without electricity and you've got just the food that you have right now, which are you going to eat first? How are you going to manage what you have as resources? So you can start right there. You don't have to buy anything or anything like that. But the best place to start is where you're at and just take an inventory and then start running through what if scenarios based upon
Yeah.
threats that you might have in your area, right?
Mhm. So that's a good segue. So I watched one of your videos, well, a few of them, but one of them struck me, and it was the video about developing a combat mindset for survival. And there were quite a few good points on here, and I'm definitely condensing this. The video was long, not long, but it was detailed and he went in depth in each point. But I'm just going to share a few of those highlights. And then my question to you after this is, which of these that I'm going to talk about here do you think people commonly get wrong? So the highlights of this video, and I don't know if combat mindset, but it's speaking to mindset. The first thing is understanding that good people can do bad things. Secondly, to understand you might have to do bad things to survive, and you need to know where your line in the sand is. Third, walk softly and carry a very big stick. I love that one. And the best weapon you can have is avoidance, which I love because we talk about that too. Your best weapon is avoidance. Um, the next one is be prepared to change course. Don't always follow authority, follow your gut. That was a good one too. And he fleshed that one out really well. I encourage you to go watch that video on Warrior Life. Another one is to take a firearms course. There's no substitute for actual experience under stress, which we fully believe in. And he talks about competitive shooting and paintball and hunting and all those things. And then another one is that the rule of law is going to find some way to come back around. And I fully believe that. I think that if there's lawlessness, whether it is order coming back and law coming back, that will follow you where you go. But I also believe in accountability, judgment, if you will, to a higher power. And so I think whatever choices you do make, you have to be prepared to live with. So I loved that video that you did. And which one of those do you think people commonly get wrong? Was it well, I'll just let you speak to it.
Which
I
one do
won't give
you
mine.
think people get wrong?
Um,
Which of those resonated with you that you think, yeah, people don't really?
I think that the good people can do bad things. I think people don't understand that if it gets really bad, that how bad it really could get. And we don't want to think about that, right? I mean, that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't get into self-defense or get into training until something happens to them, right?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
fall into that category. So I have a whole story about that. So I do think that that's true. We don't want to think bad things could happen or that people could be bad. It's just easier not to think about it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I had to take notes on that because I totally forgot what the seven things were. But I'm in my 50s, and you're obviously 23. I'm going to
Oh,
say
and yeah.
so.
Well,
Yeah,
I
my
wish.
memory's
Thank
going
you.
on me. But no, I would say of all of those things, and there was a reason why it was combat mindset versus like survival mindset and things like that. It was really more about things that I kind of from combat that I've come to learn. And so I would say that the thing I think that people get wrong, and I'll bring this out as I think most people get this wrong because it applies to um, it applies to firearms as well. And that's people don't understand that rule of law will come back around. I think in general, people don't understand the law. I think I've seen even the most experienced shooters out there who don't understand their responsibility. I mean, they'll talk
Mhm.
all the time um, about the Second Amendment, right? Like, we got to protect the Second Amendment, but they don't realize that the easiest way for you to lose your Second Amendment rights is be a dumbass with your gun. And they really don't. A lot of people just don't even really understand the basic concepts of when they can even show their weapon, that
Mhm.
they're not going to get in trouble. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter necessarily if you're innocent. Like, you can go to court, and if you take a plea deal, it's still a felony conviction. It can still be a felony conviction. So it's, I think that most people don't understand that. Like, we have a video test that people can take, and as they go through it, it's draw, don't draw, shoot, don't shoot. And the situations aren't super tricky. They're things that you could absolutely find yourself in. And
Mhm.
I think that I forgot that we changed the numbers a little bit here and there, but it stays pretty steady at about 70% of people can't pass that. And
Mhm.
we have you can either go home, go to jail, or go to the morgue. Like, decisions that you make can either get you killed or not make can get you killed. But
Right.
not understanding those concepts. And so a lot of people, we see freeze, like we can see how
Mhm.
long they're on the screen, everything, they'll freeze because they don't really know what to do. They got to think about it. Well, when somebody's coming at you in a parking lot, you don't have time to really like stop and think about that stuff.
Mhm.
But even I was watching Andrew Bronco. I don't know if you ever had him on the show, but Andrew is an attorney. He has a whole his whole thing is about, like, how do you protect yourself as a gun owner, and making the right choices legally. And the other day, he jumped into an impromptu broadcast about, I guess somebody had forwarded him. I guess Trump said something about looters should be shot or something like that. Like, if he's president, I don't want to mess up all the quote, but it was something about, like, looters. It was okay to shoot looters in some way. And
Mhm.
and so I was watching it, and I knew where he was going to go with it. It was like, no, if somebody's stealing something, you can't just shoot them. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter who said it. You can't do that. You're going to be. But when I was looking at the comments in the live stream, everybody's like, yeah, it's like, well, he just won my vote again. It's just a bunch of stuff in there about like, what you're doing is you're putting your label on your beliefs on there. And so all the comments that you make online, those things are going to live on. And so if you ever do find yourself in a situation where you had to use your firearm, or even if it was unarmed and you had to do harm to another person, and you're called into question for that, if it's a survival scenario and you legitimately had, like, somebody was busting into your house and legitimately you thought you were going to be attacked, and you legitimately shoot them, and you're 100% justified in doing it. But then you had this big giant piece of plywood out on your front lawn saying looters will be shot, survivors will be shot again.
Yeah.
And that was a sign that was out. I have some videos on YouTube. I had a neighbor of mine that had that sign up on his driveway. It was like, trespassers will be shot, survivors will be shot again. And it's like, okay, so try and convince the jury it was just a joke when, why did you have to put 17 rounds into this person? Well, he kept fighting back. It's like, well, are you sure? Because it seems like maybe he was just alive and he wasn't dead yet. So you've got to be very cautious. Like I tell you, take down those signs. We don't dial 911. Like, no, of course you dial 911. Get rid of all that crap. Because it's not going to play right when if a prosecutor decides that they're gonna take the case and they feel like they've got something on you and they want to make an example out of you, like they're going to parade the stuff that you've put online, signs that you had. Oh no, but I was just joking about that stuff. Oh no, my brother-in-law bought me that t-shirt or that bumper sticker. And so I think it's the law part of it that, whether it's survival, whether it's firearms, or even if it's unarmed self-defense, I think people don't really understand the implications of their actions.
Totally agree. Totally agree with you. Such good information. So, hey guys, we're almost at the end of the hour already. So if you have questions for Jeff, please put those in the comments. He's not going to be here much longer. He is on Eastern time. So
yeah,
it's past his bedtime.
Past my bedtime. It is past my bedtime, Laura. Thanks. I know it was a joke, but it's past my bedtime.
Yeah, it's almost past mine too, Jeff. It's okay. So if you guys have questions for Jeff, please put those in the comments. We'll get to those here in just a second. So let's leave the audience, Jeff, with some more information about you. I want you to talk about, and you have the shirt on, I see, the nonprofit Operation Save Our Soldiers. Could you speak to that for just a little bit, and then also let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just been up when I was on a personal mission just for helping my brothers. I'd had a bunch of I was out of the military in 10 years, but I had a lot of my friends that I'd gone into the military with. Like, we were in a cohort unit in 10th Mountain Division. So we went to basic together, and we were together for like 3 years after that. And so a lot of my friends stayed in, made it a career, and we're having we're losing soldiers to suicide. And finally there was one of my buddies called me and he said, dude, we found, like, this is a freaking cure. And got me onto the board for an organization where this woman was doing some amazing work with veterans, where it was just like that. It was just erasing the symptoms. And so I was part of that organization for a while, but there were some limitations to her organization, and it really wasn't taking off. It really only came down to her skills. We could only do like so many people, but then there was a better version of what she was doing that I discovered when I separated from that organization. And it was really just getting off the ground when it came to veterans. It was trauma-based therapy originally for sexual assault victims, but they found it worked just as well for veterans as well. And so I connected with another combat veteran. She was just bringing that protocol out into helping more veterans out there, was building out retreats. I was trying to build retreats to cover the same protocol that I had found helpful before. But I suck at organizing anything. She's great at organizing everything. She couldn't raise money, but so my nonprofit, we raise money and sponsor veterans to come to the retreat to get a brain-based healing protocol that we use. And we are literally taking veterans who have been in the VA system and curing, I'll say the word curing, we're curing those symptoms of PTSD in as little as 1 hour. Done.
Whoa.
Permanently. We have brain scans to prove it now. We've been really getting the proof to show it. And now the military is finally like starting to take more notice of it. There's no drugs involved. There's no reliving the pain of past experiences. And it's really just, I'll simplify it for people just because PTSD, and I put a dash in between D because it's not a disorder. You don't have a disorder. It's not a disease. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it mechanically, if you look at the brain mechanically, it's in disorder. And so what I mean by that is our brains have a recycle bin and a trash bin. Trauma is stored in the recycle bin because it's meant to keep you alive. It's a gift. Post-traumatic stress is a gift because if your convoy gets hit by an IED, it's meant to allow you to recognize symptoms very fast, and then your body takes over. It's not a conscious thing. It's all subconscious. And so it's in this recycle bin in your brain so that if it doesn't even matter if consciously you understand. That's why a lot of veterans can't listen to fireworks or go to 4th of July. Of course, it's fireworks. It's not gunfire, but your subconscious doesn't know that. It's still registering that it's gunfire. And so it brings back the hormonal response, the anxiety, whatever it is that you got locked into your recycle bin. It's there for a reason, and it comes back and it comes back and it comes back. And so the traditional method that the VA has used forever and a lot of therapists use is talk therapy. Like we have to talk about it until you become so desensitized to it that it just doesn't even you've talked your way through it already. And that doesn't work. You're trying to consciously approach something that subconsciously got you anchored in. And so what you have to do is you have to work with the subconscious mind. The subconscious is where it's rooted. And all we're doing with this protocol is it's a number of different tools that we have that are brain-based protocols that they're very kind of funny to do sometimes, but what it's doing is it's taking that memory that you have, that memory, and it's putting it in the trash bin. You still have the memory. You're not getting brainwashed or anything, but it's just, you can see the moment that it happens. And it happened to me. I thought I had my shit buried like deep, deep down. Like I didn't have any problems whatsoever. And then when I came to the first retreat, all of a sudden I started having panic attacks, and I'd never had panic attacks before in my life. And I didn't know why until Kendra, the woman that I she's the other combat veteran. And she said, "You're getting triggered." And I'm like, I have no idea what you're even like, this can't be. And so I went and had, in 1 hour, like all of a sudden it's just like, wait a minute, what just happened? And I love seeing, like, we get 10 to 12 veterans into every retreat. Every 100% of the donations that come into our nonprofit goes to sponsoring the veteran. I personally take care of all of our administrative expenses, so that when people donate, it's not like 80% goes to there, but 20% goes to admin. No, 100% goes to sponsoring a veteran. They leave a different person. You're going to make me start crying. I'm going to start
Has this been like 100% effective, Jeff?
It's 91% effective. We've only had one person I know of that came that I know it didn't work on, and I know why. Sometimes people get anchored into their identity as a veteran with PTSD, and it's hard to let go of that. Like they don't really have, like it hasn't become such an overriding urge that they want to escape it because it's part of their identity of who they are. But we've had a guy, one of the sessions that we do is on pain management and pain things. We had a guy that was, when he was leaving the retreat, for 5 years, he wasn't able to move this finger. Like it didn't bend. So he was leaving the retreat and he was going for surgery on whatever, the tendons or whatever, to allow him to bend his finger again. There was a 1 hour session that we did. It's a certain kind of a meditation that revolves around pain. We got out of that and he's like, I won't use the F word here, but he's like, I bend my effing finger. And it was just what the mind can do is is mind blowing. What it can
Yeah, it
do. I mean, it
is.
can have that kind of control. And so
Wow.
whether that was his like I never really looked at like deeply, was it his trigger finger or anything like that?
Hmm.
But that's the power of the mind is there to protect you, and trauma and where it's stored and PTS is there to keep you alive. It's a gift. Love it. But it doesn't have a purpose in your everyday life with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers. And it doesn't have to. I love it when we see, like, you can see the moment. And like I said, we've got guys that have been on medications. They're on all the pills.
Yeah.
They've been through decades inside the VA. We even take we've had Vietnam veterans come through. We brought them in too, and they're just like bawling at the end of the thing because it's like they've never experienced that kind of relief before. But you can see it happen
Wow.
in their brain where it's just like something just happened. Like what just happened? All of a sudden, you ask them, okay, go ahead and think back to something we haven't even talked about that's been traumatic for you. And they're like, there's no trigger. Like, and they just
Wow.
start laughing. And it's like they can't believe it. And they're just, when we get everybody together after they've had their individual like healing visits, it's just, they just can't believe it. It's just, it really is amazing.
Huh.
It's so rewarding. Yeah.
Wow.
But
So can
Operation
people
Save Our
go somewhere
Soldiers is
to
my,
learn about that, Jeff?
yeah. So Operation Save Our Soldiers is my nonprofit. And so you can go to operationsaveoursoldiers.org. There is a place you can donate there. And again, 100% of it goes to sponsoring a veteran to get the help that they need.
Wow.
And then, I mean, we've got a backlog of veterans. The word's really gotten around because people are going out there and they're calling their battle buddies who
Mm-hmm.
everybody just thinks that I mean, people come in like this. Our
Mm-hmm.
hardest thing is getting past this. Like, I've been through the VA, I've done all this stuff. It's not going to work, blah, blah, blah. That's the hardest part because it does work. And then all of a sudden they're calling all their buddies like, dude, I know about the VA. I know. It's
Mm-hmm.
different, man. Like, this worked. You've got to get out here. Then we get the calls
Hmm.
from the spouses. We get like, you gave my daughter her father back. You gave my husband back. We have women's retreats from female veterans. And it's amazing. I could go on and on about it,
Wow.
but it's truly revolutionary but again, it's like a real re-education about what, therapy. We don't even call it therapy because it's different.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not therapy. We don't call it therapy because we
Huh.
don't want it to be like everything else. It's different for a reason because nothing else was really working.
Right. I wonder if first responders could benefit from that as well,
Oh,
A
absolutely.
lot of
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Wow, that's
Yeah.
really, really
And it can be done
powerful.
long distance. It can be done over Zoom too. Like, it can,
What? Are you
so if
serious?
anybody, yeah, I'm dead serious. So if anybody does, like, if you know somebody, and one thing is we don't let, like, family members can't like get their family member in, like, oh, my son or my
Mhm.
brother, he really needs it. Like, people have to come on their own, but we do a call ahead of time to be able to not talk about like their trauma or anything, but really just to make sure that they're in the right mindset, that they really want to heal, that they're in a good space for it. We might work out some things before they even come to the retreat. Like, you have to come there clear-minded, like no alcohol, no drugs. Like, you got
Mhm.
to come clean because we're working with the brain here. And all of
Mhm.
those things affect how your brain operates. And so if we're going to literally rewire the brain, we're rewiring the brain. It needs to be clear. And so there might be some things we have to do before people get out there, but we make sure that they're coming in ready to go. And it's just amazing.
Wow. I have never heard of anything like that ever before.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you said
But
you
if
went
somebody
through it
is out
yourself?
there, yeah, I went through it myself, and I didn't know what the protocol was. I knew what it did, and that was all I cared about. Like, I don't care. Just get
Mhm.
just get the healing out there. I'll bring more people in. We'll raise more money. We'll do all that thing to just get it to them. And then I was getting triggered,
Mm.
and then a fellow combat veteran was there, who was also a practitioner. We went off into a room, and he did a couple of exercises with me. And the thing is, like, when you visualize trauma that you went through, it's the brain where it's stored in the recycle bin, it's like it's happening to you right then. That's why you're
Mhm.
getting the hormonal response, because it's like your brain is reading, this is happening. There's gunfire. No, it's fireworks. No, it's gunfire. And all of a sudden, like, your body is having the response like it's happening right now. And so when I
Mhm.
would visualize the things that I witnessed, it was vivid. It was like I was there. It was first person.
Mhm.
When then he did a couple of these exercises with me, he's like, I want you to go back to what you were thinking about before that we were, and I want you to talk to me about it now. What does it look like now? And I was like, this is weird. Like, this is weird. And he's like, well, explain it to me. And I said, it's like everything is on like a movie screen, like out in front of me. It's not
Oh, you have
happening to me. It was
separation
just,
from it now.
it was like, and all the like colors were drab. It wasn't vivid like it was before. And it was like, it's like watching just on a screen. And he's like, well, how does it
Huh.
feel inside? I'm like, nothing. Stuff that I couldn't get through without just bawling like a baby. It just, like, I could think about it, I could talk about it, and it just, now the only thing that makes me cry about it is just like seeing these veterans come through and
Mm.
guys saying, you know, I had a gun in my mouth like the night before I came out here.
Mhm.
And it's like, I can't believe I got my life back.
Wow.
It's just, yeah, we're changing lives. We're literally saving lives out there with this.
Wow. Well, we will be sure to add that to the comments because I didn't have that in there before into the description. Um, awesome work, Jeff. Awesome work. Now, as far as Warrior Life is concerned, we have all of the social media and your website running at the bottom of the screen now. So if you guys want to check out what Jeff's doing, you can go to warriorlife.com. OperationSaveOurSoldiers.org is the organization that he was speaking about just now. So if you want to help out with that, please go there. And yeah, now we're over the hour, and I just got so
I got
into
time
what you
for
were saying.
questions. If we can get to questions, I'm happy to go in
Yeah,
questions.
we have a few here. So, Kathy wants to know, in your opinion, what are the main skills you will need when society collapses besides defense skills?
Four-wheel drive monster truck, a bunker in the hills of Montana, six-pack abs. That should pretty much do it. I think you're pretty much good to go there. I
Oh.
think that the main skills that you'll need when like society collapses, besides defense skills, you're going to be thirsty and you're going to be hungry. And we've got a friend of mine that's in our network also, who has done a lot of work on the history of starvation, like what's happened in throughout history in regimes where sometimes people were starved on purpose, and what they go through, and what people will do when they're starving. So food's going to be a big part of it. I tell people, like, water is not going to be as much of an issue. Like, it's more of a survival issue. Like, you need water more than you need food.
Mm-hmm.
Water is going to be easier to find. It's easier to prepare for, not by storing it, but like by being able to become your own water factory. Like, there are ways to filter water. There's things to do like that, but there's wild stuff out there. Now there's wild food too, but plants, like, how many salads do you have to eat to get enough calories to do anything, right? And if you're going to go hunting, like, I went hunting my entire childhood, and with my stepfather, we never saw one single thing, never pulled the trigger ever. So it's not that easy, right? So I think food is going to be a big thing. I I would say that being a lone wolf is not going to be a winning plan. So starting to think about, we have one of our training courses, our workshops for our Academy, where it was on the truth about survival teams, because it's kind of like one of those cool, sexy topics that preppers love.
Mm-hmm.
And but we took people through a series of fun exercises that got them to realize that, one, you already have a team, whether you think about it or not. That's not planned, like the ones that are going to show up on your door. And then even if you have a team, it's the people that they're going to bring with them. It's like, oh, but I couldn't leave it's like, you have to decide now, like, who's going to get eaten by zombies and who's not, because you're going to have to close the door here at some point,
Mm.
right? So, but it's like, how do you think about those things? So I would say that if you're a lone wolf, you're going to get devoured. You're going to get devoured. And so thinking about it in terms of banding together with people that are also like-minded, that are willing to prepare, are willing to do the things that are needed to assume that sort of an event could happen, because it can happen.
Mhm. That's really
So
good. Good. Okay, the next one is, what is your upbringing and how did that play into your passion for helping others?
yeah, that's a good question. I grew up in a little town in upstate New York. I think I got most of. I was always just a very. There's a reason I'm saying this, but like I was a very sensitive kid. Like I care about other people. I was very compassionate. My mother is an extremely compassionate person, and that got really ingrained in me. And I think when I joined the military in combat, the most rewarding thing for me, and it really gave me a sense of I guess of really like what I who I was at my core, and that you can marry. In fact, I think it was one of those combat mindset things, which was what was it? Walk softly but carry a very big stick, right? Like
Mhm.
you don't have to be a hard ass. You don't have to be um, hard on the exterior. Like I'm one of the easiest going people you will ever meet. And I have a lot of compassion for my fellow man. I don't get pulled into political BS. I don't get like I look for the person. I look for who the person really is. And so that was ingrained in me early. And in combat, having the people that the citizens in the area we were in come out and hug us because they were so happy that we freed them in their area. Like it just really gave me a sense for why we were doing that. Now at the same time, I saw soldiers who were, you know, mean to people, like they were just cocky and overconfident about it. So not everybody has that level, but I think it is a warrior quality to care
Mhm.
about people. And I'm not saying that, you know, when it starts raining and it doesn't stop, that, you know, just, you know, shoot anybody that gets on your front porch. I've been through natural disasters where everybody pulls together. It's not like looters are
Mhm.
coming out of the woodworks like in a lot of, you know, these areas. So I would say that so my upbringing was one where I think I got very good core qualities that I like about myself as a person, and married with the ability to, you know, kill a man with my pinky in under 5 seconds. You know, it's like being able, but for me, that's where everything has evolved for me from my early martial arts training to now firearms training. Like for me, I've learned more and more that I think you'll appreciate this from a firearm standpoint also, is that you've got to you've got to really train for and understand where that line is. Like I call it the switch. And it really originated first when when I was looking at self-defense, because you can see like somebody who's much bigger than somebody else, like you can see the intimidation factor. They've already been beaten. And people don't realize just how easy it is to take out a human being. They don't understand how frail and fragile the human body really is if you know how to
Mhm.
attack it. And so but most people lose fights because they don't realize they're in a fight. Like they don't realize they're about to get hit. I've seen this in so many different
Mm.
videos. Same thing like with firearms. It's like if it's an unfamiliar situation, if you haven't trained for it, if you haven't even thought about it, you don't
Mhm.
know what to do.
You're
And when you
still
don't know what to do, you
processing. Yeah.
freeze. You're still
Yeah.
processing, right? But the criminals don't have to go through that process. That OODA loop,
Yeah.
they're already in action.
Yeah.
Like you're always going to be coming off of, well, almost always going to be coming off of they've got the advantage, and you're going to have to fight for getting the advantage back. That's not an easy thing to do. So
Mhm.
understanding like that switch for yourself, um, you can be soft, you can smile right in the face of danger, but then when you know where your switch is, you switch. It's not a playground like, well, we'll start pushing first to see who's going to punch first. It's
Yeah.
no, like you've given every out you can, you've tried to de-escalate, you've done all these things, and you realize you are not getting out of this fight. And the
Mhm.
first person that throws that strike is usually the one that's going to win. They certainly have the advantage. I would much rather it be me. But if I don't know where that switch is, then I don't, you know, I'm going to either freeze or I'm going to make a mistake in what I'm doing. I'm not going to be conscious of my surroundings. My brain's going to be focused on other things. So, but I know where that switch is. And when I see that switch happen, it's you just unleash. You unleash.
Yeah.
Same thing, like don't draw your firearm just to show somebody your firearm. Like you got to know where your line is when you're legally justified to do it and tactically in a position where it's time to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the most dangerous people, I do believe, are also the kindest. You know, they're kind people, compassionate people. They have big hearts. They care about others, but they also do whatever they have to do to protect themselves and those they love. And that is, I
Yeah.
think, the definition of a dangerous person and a good one.
Yeah.
Let's see here. There's more questions. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I don't
Let's
want
do
you to
it.
stay up, to midnight or anything.
I took my
Okay.
Geritol today, so
I'm not making fun, Jeff.
you don't even you
Is
don't even remember Geritol. Shut up. I didn't even know what
I've
you're
hear
talking.
I think I've seen a commercial maybe.
You've heard of it before. Yeah.
Yes, I have. Is there a way for a non-vet to get the therapy for PTS? I have a friend whose daughter was robbed at gunpoint and she is struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are practitioners that do this now. Um, we've been trying to train as many people as possible. So we're getting a lot of and you don't have to be a therapist to have the college degree and everything in order to learn this. Like we're just trying to get people healed. So, but there is a network of therapists around the country that are continuously getting trained, and I can connect people. So if people reach out to me at operationsaveoursoldiers.org, just reach out to us there, and then we'll be able to connect you with somebody.
Okay. Okay, and then when we go to that website, can we donate there as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a donate button right at the top. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right.
Every little bit
And
counts. Every little bit counts.
yeah. And then I'm not sure exactly this question. Maybe you understand it better than I do. What do you see happening in Argentina or Bosnia?
I know there's been a lot of stuff that's been just recently happening in Bosnia. I mean, I think Argentina, they might be talking. I mean, they've been in various stages of collapse for quite a while now.
Yeah.
I think they serve as very good like learning, like kind of like a
Case
petri
study.
dish. Yeah, you can. That's what I was looking for. Case study. You
Yeah.
can really look see what happens in other places. Um, and Argentina has been one that I've looked at in the past from the standpoint of food. And they were robbing trucks like that were, because you look at the lines for like just trying to get food. It looks like they're miles long. And so people were eating dogs, they're pulling over trucks and raiding the trucks. And that was one of the things that was in the combat mission that you were talking about, was that after 3 days without resupply, where I was initially positioned when in combat, neighbors just started fighting amongst one another. And there was a truck that was there when all the fighting started, and like nobody knew what was in the truck. And after 3 days,
Whoa.
when there was no resupply, people started getting in there, and there was food in there. But then all of a sudden, it was like a massive like revolt. Like neighbors were taking it out on other neighbors, and they were all fighting over those things. So we tried to stop it initially. That was not going to happen. Hungry people will overpower you, and we weren't just get blown away. They're just civilians. So we ended up looting that truck and just making it a more organized loot than them fighting each other over it. We still had a position of authority
Mhm.
there. So yeah, I was a looter, but it probably saved lives for what was happening at that time. And so
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I think you can see those things like in Argentina and how they've dealt with financial collapse there. We're always waiting for that time bomb to nail us on the economic side. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think there's good case studies there to look at.
Awesome. Okay, well, we got through all the questions. Jeff, see, that was pretty painless, wasn't it? It wasn't too
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, sure, yeah.
No, you were so much fun to have on. I had a feeling you would be. I've watched quite a few of your videos, and I just love how articulate you are online, how you seem you said you're not organized, but it seems as though you are. So you're putting on a good front anyway. And
Yeah.
just a kind person with lots of experience to offer. So we appreciate your time tonight so much. and really, really had fun with you tonight. Appreciate you letting me poke fun here and there as well.
It's all good. Yep. Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Laura.
No worries. Okay, so you guys make sure you go to warriorlife.com, go to Warrior Life on YouTube, check out what Jeff is doing. And I forget, Adam, will you put up the Operation Save Our Soldiers.org, I think is the website that he was talking about as well. And it sounds like that's an incredible mission. So um, we are over the hour here, but really quickly, let me let you know who we're going to have on next week. So next week on October 11th, we're going to have AJ Zito back from Performance Shooting. AJ is the founder, gunsmith, and lead instructor for, it's Practical Performance. Sorry, not Practical Shooting, Practical Performance. He's former military and USPSA master in single stack division, as well as a multi-division master in IDPA. He is also, yes, a gunsmith, is completed. He's a full-time gunsmith, completing a 3-year gunsmithing education in general to advanced gunsmithing, custom competition carry, and guild quality firearms. AJ brings a vast knowledge of ballistics instruction, competition, and real-world employment of firearms to the table. And he's often considered the pros pro among the groups he's worked with. And he's a lot of fun too. So we've had him on before and we're bringing him back. If you guys have any particular questions for AJ Zito this time around, we'll be having him on next Wednesday. Feel free to email me or comment, put anything in the comments you might want to talk to AJ about. Really looking forward to having him on again. And I'll see you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time with AJ Zito next week. Until then, take care.